Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This is the second part of my three-part series of why Black women and conservatism doesn't work. In the first episode, we talked about Candace Owen, the distraction. In this episode, we'll be talking about the Tory party leader, Miss Kemi Badenoch, the politician. I'm Jim the journalist. Sit back and relax while we discuss why Black women and conservatism doesn't work. Now, I have spoken about Kemi in my oldest YouTube video, but just in case you didn't watch that, Kemi Badenoch is the Conservative Tory party leader. Not just that, but the first Black woman to lead the party. The Tory party has been historically and known to represent the middle class and rich, where historically, the Labour Party has meant to support Labour and the working class people. And just so we're all aware, Kemi's name is Olukemi Olufontu Adigoke Badenoch. She marks a shift away from the Oxbridge elite that characterised the last Tory government. She was born in Wimbledon and then went back to Nigeria before returning when she was 16 years old. As she's worked her way up the ranks in the Tory party, she has been made to be none other than a tool for the party, a distraction to the values the party has always held. In other words, she is a token Black woman that can be used to say, hey, we're not racist because we now have a Black Tory leader. But she's a force to be reckoned with. Mark my words, she is a force to be reckoned with. As a cabinet secretary in the previous government and during her campaign for leadership, she upset the LGBTQ+ community after claiming that children cannot be transgender. Despite claiming herself as a feminist, she has caused concern among those keen to protect women's rights in Britain by voting against allowing abortion pills to be prescribed by post and against buffer zones outside abortion clinics. And on her first day as Tory leader, she criticised Rachel Reeves for celebrating her appointment as the UK's first female chancellor, claiming it was a very low glass ceiling to break. Not to forget her recent comments that maternity leave in the UK is excessive and that is causing businesses to go bust. And though she backtracked slightly on that stance, it alarmed many women nonetheless. When Badenoch became leader, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, called the election of the first Black leader of a Westminster party a proud moment for the country. Many people on social media argued that we should put politics and our differences aside to acknowledge Badenoch's election as a significant moment for Black women. To some, her election signals a willingness to embrace diverse leadership and is proof that another glass ceiling in British politics had been broken. But we can't approach this in the same way we do the US because identity politics in the UK and the US are very different. Class has always been seen as a disregard when it comes to identity politics in the UK, but it's actually such a big divide between the two people of the same complexion. And Kemi is living proof of that. Badenoch is a Black woman and a working mother, and even though she represents a first for Britain's Black community, to her, it's not a big deal. She decrees the emphasis on her own racial identity and accuses educators who address white privilege of teaching inherited racial guilt. That guilt that Candace Owen hates is the same that Badenoch also hates. For her to be leader of the party that represents the British establishment, Afra Hirsch writes, it remains the easiest way to get rewarded by institutions like the Conservative Party, which are too often constitutionally allergic to progress. It offers a chance of approval for voters who have been fed such toxic ideas about immigrants and the alleged harm they're doing to the country, that only extreme pandering to those same views promises the chance of winning their affection. Professor Kahindi Andrews, a leading Black radical thinker, warns us of this familiar pattern. He says the empire has always relied on Black and brown administrators to uphold its structures. What this means is that historically the British Empire has often placed Black faces in powerful positions, not to dismantle oppressive systems, but to uphold them, as this is a tactic that is as old as colonialism itself. During Britain's colonial rule and conquest over the world, some Black and brown figures were strategically positioned in administrative roles. This gave them the illusion of inclusivity, despite the empire operating as gatekeeper of the colonial status quo. It gives the appearance of progress that allows a person of colour a seat at the table while it continues to ensure they are in the minority, their views reflecting the views of the majority, so that they can't make real change or disrupt the status quo. Right-wing political parties have continually and always put just enough people from marginalised groups in power. And so it creates an illusion of inclusivity, while the voices of the party faithful remain the loudest. Whether through collaborations in British occupied Africa or local administrators in the Caribbean, the empire has constantly used individuals from within the oppressed communities to tighten its grip. Badenoch's leadership seemingly reflects this same tactic, that was used centuries ago. Instead of challenging the systems that continue to harm Black and brown communities, she reaffirms them. Even her views on Britain's past shows that she wants to turn a blind eye to Britain's colonial rule. She believes and wants us to believe that Britain's success isn't tied to colonial history, dismissing the roles of exploitation and white privilege in building British wealth. And I think this is very interesting because in the UK, the main driving force that all the parties can't seem to get right on is their view on immigration. Like, guys, I'm serious. It's literally as if nothing else matters but immigration. And most of their views are negative. Like, it literally seems like every day there are new articles discussing and making us believe that immigration in the UK is bad and a main factor for why things are going wrong. And considering that Kemi's family would have been seen as immigrants themselves, it's so funny and quite dystopian how she now hates the system that her and her family benefited from. In an article called "What Does Kemi Badenoch Really Mean for Black Britain?" says, "This stance comforts those who prefer a whitewashed history, where colonial atrocities are minimized or ignored entirely. But for Black communities, this isn't just uncomfortable, it's erasure. By sanitizing the colonial legacy, Badenoch allows discussions around race, reparations, and historical accountability to fade, thereby protecting those who benefit from the carefully constructed amnesia. Instead, it shields the system, structures, and individuals who continue to grow and reap off the justice. When someone like Kemi is in power, it allows the silence of injustices to be loud." In 2023, she made a speech at the Conservative Party conference where she said, "I tell my children this is the best country in the world to be Black, because it's a country that sees people, not labeled." Bruh. And to say this with your whole chest, when time and time again Black people have been and still are discriminated against by the education system, work life, the police system, it's not it. It's not working. No, sir. No. Her role as an MP with a salary that people could only dream of is quite different to the life of a Black mum struggling to make demands. And she went further to say that we believe, as Martin Luther King once said, people should be judged by the context of their character, not the colour of their skin. I'm not gonna lie, there are some brownie points there, yeah.
Yeah, like she quoted Martin Luther King, yeah.
But I read once that author Zora Neale Hurston wrote, "If you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it." And this obviously isn't literal, but if Black people are silent about what we enjoy day in, day out, about what we see on the news, then yes, people like Kemi will say that the UK is the best place in the world to live. But the Black experience is more than just race in Britain. It's based on where you live, your class, how you speak, even down to the complexion of your Blackness. Let's not forget, not too long ago, when she made that deaf-tone comment about working in McDonald's and becoming working class for a few hours. Like, let's just be clear, Kemi grew up in a middle class family. Her parents, a GP and a professor of psychology, paid for her private education. Please hear me. Class inequality is not a line you can jump over when you want to. Just because she flipped some burgers, probably scrubbed the toilet, then went back to her rich family does not mean she was working class. It means she had a job. Class is something that looms over every single thing we do here, and when we look at all the social and political issues and interact with them, it's way more complex than just black and white. In a 2023 survey by the National Centre for Social Research, it was revealed that people are more likely now than 20 years ago to think that it is difficult to move from one class to another. As many as 30% now think it is very difficult to do so, almost double the portion of 70% who held that view in 2005. Your education, as we know, can reflect whether you are seen as working class or not. 60% of people who left school with the equivalent of GCSE or less identify as working class, compared to just 20% of those who went to university. Historically, people who identify as working class are more left-wing, more authoritarian, more anti-immigration than those who identify as middle class. However, working class identifiers have become less distinctively left-wing, but more distinctively authoritarian and anti-immigrant. And this is due to barriers that ethnic minorities experience in trying to gain opportunity in the UK. They're more likely to identify as working class than people from white backgrounds. And so the fact that Kemi thinks it's easy to switch classes like at school is a joke. And instead of standing as a reminder of how far we've come, or how much further we have to go, she's a tool for burying history and insulating Britain from confronting its injustices. When we do have black leaders who represent a group that under the rug pushes the need for inequality and has such power like Kemi has, it isn't progressive at all. This leadership is not designed to change and improve society, but to keep it stagnant. And if we are to have real progress, we need leaders who challenge, not uphold systems of oppression. When black faces are used to reinforce harmful structures, it's not liberation, it's control dressed up as diversity. And Badenoch's poor right-wing views on immigration, LGBTQ+ issues, and crime resonate with the Tory party and can also align with those who are older and living in England. Last year in September, for the Sunday Telegraph, it said that not all cultures are equally valid when she discussed who should be allowed into the UK. She wrote, "Our country is not a dormitory for people to come here and make money." And this reinforces the hostile, nasty representation that occurs within the Tory party, whose policies have marginalised people of colour in this country for years. This clearly shapes the laws and rules that decide and govern how people from different backgrounds are treated, ultimately impacting people's lives by either providing opportunities or limiting them based on cultural biases. In terms of representation, I agree, it is a step forward. But what good is representation when it comes from privileged people who are able to dissociate themselves from a whole part of the community? Now saying this could all be applied to a black male politician also, but I'm just focusing on gender a bit more. Especially in the UK, the trajectory for women in politics has been linked by a history of oppressive forces common in male-dominated spaces. Before 1918, women were not allowed to participate in electoral politics, let alone become parliamentarians themselves. 1918 marked the year of the first election when women were allowed to stand, and saw the election of the first woman to the Westminster Parliament. Constance Markievicz, although she didn't take up her seat, it was not until 1919 that the first female MP, Nancy Astor, took her seat in Parliament. But it took another 6 to 8 years till a black woman was elected into Parliament in 1987. Diane Abbott. Diane Abbott took her seat alongside Paul Boateng, Bernie Grant and Keith Vaz, the first people of colour to become members of Parliament since 1929. For Labour MPs, success was the outcome of the 4-year campaign from the movement for black sections in the Labour Party, who were tired of Labour taking the black vote for granted, while doing little to address the need of the UK's ethnic minority communities. Without a doubt, there are barriers that Kemi has faced, and even being a woman in politics. Women of colour across the country face a double jeopardy and know firsthand the myth of meritocracy in the workplace. Recent research with the Falset Society of the Experience of Women of Colour in the Workplace found that 75% have experienced racism at work, compared to 20% for white women. Being passed up for promotions despite good feedback. From school to the workplace, there are structural barriers standing between women of colour and the opportunities they deserve. For Parliament to be a true representative of people it seeks to serve, we need greater and honest representation of women of colour, and this needs to include women from a diverse range of backgrounds, not just from a wealthier class that will dance to the tune that the right-wing party wants. In a recent study, it was revealed that just 23% of Britons consider Badenoch to have done a good job as Tory leader so far. And while not exactly positive, this is a recovery from her position in May. And just 16% of Britons felt she was doing well in the role and 51% felt she was doing poorly. Even among Conservative voters, just 25% feel she looks ready for office, while a majority of 53% do not. And so no matter how much she plays to their tune, she will probably never be able to live up to expectations of the leader that came before her, or the leaders who came before her. I agree that more must be done to support the election and career development of politicians who sit at the intersection of multiple disadvantages, including working class and disabled women of colour, who would favour policies that take into consideration these nuances and target and support marginalised communities across society. If we have black women in politics who are uninterested in fighting for us, we won't get far. Susan Akioman wrote, "When black women say we want black women in politics, we're talking about substantive representation. We want black women in power who will fight for changes that benefit us as women, who understand the issues we face today." Kemi is not a clear representation of black women voices in the UK. She's not even a clear representation of her party, but nonetheless, she will continue to seek individual gain in a party that solely sees her as a pawn. And this is why when we see black politicians in such high roles in parliament, in office, it makes you question their motive. It makes you question, who are they really doing this for? Because to really be for the people, you need to understand their needs. You need to understand what the country are going through. Just because you are part of one party, you need to appeal to the whole nation to sit in that seat. And I don't see, as a black woman, how Kemi is able to stick to her Tory beliefs and Tory values whilst also trying to form and maintain a relationship with ethnic minority communities that have been continuously pushed out by that same party. What are your thoughts on Kemi? What are your thoughts on black women politicians? How do we navigate the complexity of the role and the person? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you everyone for watching this second part of my series, Why Black Women and Conservatism Doesn't Work. If you enjoyed this, please do like, comment and subscribe. Every little helps, guys, please. You know this, every little helps, okay? I'm trying to make it to 200 subscribers. So if you're watching this and you've got this far, you might as well just subscribe. Like, the content is good. The content is good. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Shana Journalist. I will be back soon for part 3.